Hello and welcome to the new coach training for the Cash Coach program. My name is Chad Rifflin. I'm the Director of Programs and Grants here at Consumer Credit Counseling Service of Rochester. We are one of the partner organizations for the Cash Coach program, and we're very grateful that you've agreed to be a coach. We trust that this is going to be a great experience for you and that this training will be a tremendous help as you get started. The training will progress on its own if you are in slideshow mode. If you advance a slide or you go back, then the recording for each slide will start over. So if there's something that you'd like to hear again or something that you might have heard before and that you want to progress through, you can still navigate using the normal keys to advance the PowerPoint. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. We're going to be talking about several things today that will help you to understand the coach program and to know how to operate as a successful coach. One of the great things that I'll tell you right off the bat when it comes to being a cash coach is that you do not have to be a financial expert. And you'll see why that is in a moment here. So we're going to touch on the things that are most important to the success of the coaching program that we've learned from our trial and error and study over the past 10 years. First, we're going to give you a description of the coach program. We're going to talk about the role of the coach and how that differs from a financial counselor. We're going to talk quite a bit about how to build effective coaching relationships, as that is the foundation and critical component to the success of the coach program. We're going to go over the process for your first meeting, or what we call our orientation meeting, as well as the dates for those upcoming meetings and how that's arranged. We'll talk about how to conduct your one-on-one meetings with your participant, who we call partners. We'll also go over some of the guidelines for communicating and how to also lay expectations for your partner within the context of how you want to manage the relationship. We'll also go over some procedures for dealing with special circumstances. For example, if someone is a no-show or if you're having trouble communicating with your partner to coordinate meetings and so on. And then we'll also talk about how you can record your reporting and communication for the program. So the materials for this training are this PowerPoint that you've received, along with the coach manual, which is a PDF document that should have been emailed to you with your invitation to participate in this training. If you didn't receive that attachment, or if something is not working the way that it should be, you can contact either myself or any of the other contacts that are on the screen here, and we'll be able to get that information to you and get things cleared up appropriately. Dan Huntington is our volunteer coordinator who works with Empire Justice Center, and Mary Maynard is our cash coach assistant who is also with Empire Justice Center. The contents of that manual are in 3 parts. If you're looking at that right now, you'll see the first part is the same coach training information that you're seeing up here on the screen. The second part are all of the assessment documents and the partner information documents and tools that will be used to get all the information that we need to show the work of the program. And then in the back will be some very helpful resources that you can use throughout the coaching experience, depending upon what it is you're trying to accomplish with your partner. So first off, we're going to talk about the Cash Coach program, give you some history and understanding as to how it came together and what our aim and focus is overall. So the Cash Coach program actually started in 2005 as a pilot program when a number of organizations, including Cash and Consumer Credit Counseling Service of Rochester, came together and looked at different ways that we can make an impact in the community here to help individuals who needed assistance in becoming more self-sufficient. Honestly, at that time, we didn't even know what coaching was, and coaching wasn't really a model that was being promoted very heavily throughout the United States yet. So we collaborated together and decided that folks really needed some way to connect with a support system, to have learning opportunities, and to get connected to resources that were going to help them in a relevant way to improve their financial picture. So our vision was just to help individuals develop long-term financial improvement, that they would be empowered to take control over their finances. It would help them to make those behavioral changes that they know that they wanted to make as they were learning new things about their finances. And lo and behold, this whole process was called coaching. And it's been a very successful model that we've learned from and continued to develop since that time. So we're very excited that you are going to be a part of this, and we think that you'll see along with us what a great impact and difference this can make for folks. A few of the goals that we have for the coach program. Number one is to provide financial coaching, quite obviously. And we're going to talk about a definition of what financial coaching means in just a moment here. Secondly is to provide financial education. We want folks to be empowered to also have the knowledge, have the understanding that's going to give them that confidence, give them those tools that they need to make good, informed decisions for their situation so that they can move forward successfully. And then thirdly, there are 3 specific outcomes that we track throughout the program. These are very important to us because they help us to show the actual impact that the program makes on people's financial lives as well as their ability to be self-sufficient. So we measure these 3 things, their savings to debt, and we're going to show you how we do the measurement of these 3 in just a moment here. We also measure how well folks are doing with certain financial management behaviors, both before they enter the program and after they complete the program. And then we evaluate how far people progress in achieving the financial goals that they set through the program. Goal setting is a very big part of the Cash Coach program. We have a very specific approach to goal setting that we have learned from experience and other experts along the way that we're going to focus real heavily on in a moment here as well. So next, let's talk about the role of the coach. And I'm just going to reiterate again, as we mentioned before, that a coach is different than a financial planner or a financial counselor. And one of the great strengths that we have with the coach program is that we have those types of roles, we have those types of individuals who are coordinating and supporting the program. So those individuals who are coaches don't have to have a whole ton of financial expertise. They really need to know how to coach someone, which is a role that pretty much anybody can fulfill if they're willing to learn the right tools and the right approach, and that's what we're going to get into right now. So let's take a look at the role of a financial coach. A financial coach operates a little bit differently than any other type of expert who's offering financial advice in that they are giving encouragement, they're offering guidance, information, and options to someone who is working on specific financial goals. Of course, the similarities are that it's confidential. You know, we have a saying that what's said in the coaching program stays in the coaching program. So we follow very specific confidentiality procedures, but at the same time, we're really working hard to encourage folks to take the steps that they know they want to take and know how to take, and giving people the power and support to do that. And then lastly, as I mentioned a moment ago, the program really focuses on reaching financial goals and structuring all of the different supports, the answers to the questions that we give around that goal piece. Often when someone has a question about something related to their finances, whether it be their credit score or getting out of debt, the first question that we ask is, well, what is your goal? What is it that you are trying to accomplish? Because the answer to those questions can change depending upon what that goal is for each individual. So let's spend a little bit of time talking about the responsibilities of a coach. First and foremost, a coach should focus the coaching relationship on the partner's financial goals. Financial goals are certainly very important within the context of how we've come to design the Cash Coach program. And a lot of the things that we will discuss throughout the remainder of this training will be about financial goals. We always advise folks to consider what their financial goals are first before they come to a solution or some sort of resolution to any question that they might have, because the answer to those questions can change depending upon what the goal is. So for example, if someone asks whether or not they should pay off XYZ debt, the question usually is, well, what's your goal? If your goal is simply to get out of debt, there might be a specific strategy that makes more sense than if your goal was to improve your credit score. So focus that relationship, number one, on the partner's financial goals and not what our goals might be for them or what we'd want to impose upon them for their goals. Secondly, and along the same lines, is to show respect for your partner's values and priorities, as well as their personal support networks, which can be vastly different, not only between the individuals who participate in the Cash Coach program, but can be very different from those who participate as coaches. And folks might be coming from different backgrounds, different experiences that they've had in their lives, and they might have different values and priorities than we do. Overall, our goal is to help folks to move forward in a manner that is going to best suit them with their values and priorities, as it will benefit their goals. And we help them do that primarily by asking the right questions, by helping people to have a good reflecting point and to be able to explore those answers for themselves to come to the right conclusion, not to just adopt the conclusion or answer that we would impose upon them based on our values or priorities. Thirdly, and I think this is really important as well, is to help our partners recognize their strengths. Folks come in kind of beat up sometimes, or discouraged or frustrated. Sometimes they don't recognize the good things that they're doing. And a good strategy is to help them to do that, to see where they are making a good decision, where they are taking the right steps, and to help them understand how to build on that or to transition that same approach and strategy to another area where they might want to make an improvement. Also, obviously, respect their confidentiality. What is said in the coach program stays in the coach program. Along with that, we ask that you never take any personally identifiable information home with you. So any bank statements, credit card statements, social security number, anything that would be sensitive, that should only remain with your participant or partner. You should not be taking any of that information with you. We're going to ask you complete session notes. We're going to talk about that in a moment here. Very simple process where it helps us to understand what's happening and that the sessions are taking place. And then, of course, to make sure that you feel free to seek referral assistance and information when necessary. We have many great supports that will help you along the way, that are always there throughout the coaching experience that we're going to talk about next. So we have several supports that can help you as you continue through the coaching experience, whether you have a question or you feel like you need resources or some support, some direction, better insight, that have been very valuable to everyone to date. First would be our coach mentors. These are individuals who are now volunteering to be a support to new coaches. These are folks who have been coaches for many years. They're kind of our, quote, veteran coaches. They maybe have worked with several partners, and they can help you to have some specific direction based on different situations that are often faced. We also have an online LinkedIn group. If you utilize LinkedIn, you can participate in that group. You can ask questions. Since it's a private group, they'll be within the confines of that particular group, and you can get support from fellow coaches and coach mentors through that group. Also, and we're going to talk about this further in a moment here as well, at each monthly meeting, we have time where we can have a breakout session. What that means is we will take 15 minutes or so to have time where coaches and partners meet individually, and they're able to cross-reference and share information, ask each other questions, and get support from one another with the shared experience. And then, of course, we are always there for you as the program coordinators. You can always reach out to us directly at any time. We will be there at every single group meeting, and we will be able to point you in the right direction and make sure that you get the help that you need. As far as our group meeting structure is concerned, the dates and times for that will be in the schedule that was probably provided to you within the email that you received for this training. If you didn't receive that, of course, you can reach out to us and we can get that to you. But this is the structure for each group meeting. Timeframes might vary a little bit depending upon the meeting that we are following that month. But the first half hour is typically a group speaker, and it will be a topic that is according to the schedule. The topics that we follow go on a 9-month basis, a rotation. That series of topics will renew, if you will, every 9 months, so that no matter when someone is starting the coach program, if they participate for 9 months, then they will be able to get all of those topics in. The second half an hour is what we utilize at times for our breakout sessions. It doesn't happen every single month, but we use that time again where coaches meet together and then separately partners meet together and they're able to offer some support to one another. For your first meeting, during this time is when you will begin your orientation with your partner, and you'll go through the orientation process that we'll describe in a moment here. And then the last hour is the most important part of the coaching program, and that's why that's bolded at the end there to emphasize again the fact that the one-on-one meeting time between partners and coaches is really what the program is all about. Everything else that we have established, the group speaker, the breakout sessions, is really just to add some structure to the program and to give folks that opportunity to be a part of a shared experience. And from time of our experience with doing Cash Coach, we've learned that that's very important and valuable. But again, most important piece that we want to emphasize is that one-on-one time during the group meetings. So I mentioned a couple times that Cash Coach is a 9-month program. So what we do is we track participation through sign-in sheets and other mechanisms to see how many meetings people have participated in, and we consider someone to have completed where they're eligible for graduation if they've done 9 months worth of programming. Some folks are not going to do that, of course. There's times where circumstances change. Folks might enter into a program, might take on classes, or they just move, find a job somewhere else, etc. That does happen. If that's the case, what we do is we attempt to match you with another participant if you're still interested, and we will continue that same process that we started when you got matched up with your first participant. If you run into any type of issue with someone who, expresses a change that was unexpected, then you just let us know and we'll initiate that process and make sure that we get things on track and get you into a good place as a volunteer coach. So now we're going to transition and we're going to get into some of the meat and potatoes of really what makes the coach program successful. And that's found in establishing and building solid coaching relationships. And there's a number of tools and a number of elements that we found to be most helpful and of the most importance when we accomplish this goal. And that's what we're going to go over right now. To help you understand why it's so important and what ways we want to pursue establishing relationships, we're first going to talk about our clients. You probably heard me a few times already refer to our clients as partners, and there's a number of reasons why we refer to them as partners. One, as you can see already, is because we do see the coaching relationship as an equal give and take. We see it as equal ground where we are partnering with someone to be their champion as they work towards their financial goals, to be that support figure, to help them have clarity, to help them have that structure to move forward. Our partners come from many different walks of life, many different backgrounds. They have to income qualify for the program. Their income has to be below what we would call the self-sufficiency level. They have to have specific financial goals that they've identified that they're working on that relate to something that they are saving for to improve their financial picture, such as home ownership, which is probably the largest goal that our participants have, or getting out of debt, or improving their credit score. The challenges that they typically face are things like high debt, income does not meet expenses, There might have been past situations where they were unemployed for a period of time, fell behind and have to catch up, or someone who recently had something unexpected happen like an illness or lost their job, etc. We typically do not have folks in the program who are facing a crisis financial situation. We will ask that in our application and interview with our partners to see if they really need crisis intervention, and we'll direct those folks to the appropriate resources. But the individuals who we're working with are those who have specific goals, and they really just need that push forward to get ahead. They will have financial challenges and struggles. They will definitely need to get things worked out, maybe improve their income. That's why we do often bring in resources along those lines. But these are folks who have something to work with. They have some sort of capability and need to make some changes. The feelings that they bring are often frustration, maybe some confusion, maybe a little bit of trepidation. But along with that, a lot of our partners also bring in a lot of hope. They're also really bringing in some motivation and an internal desire to move forward and to make things happen. So there's a lot that can be drawn upon, a lot that can be used to really help people to take the steps that are needed. Sometimes their experiences might be some frustrations with financial institutions, or having experienced a deal that went wrong, or got pulled into some sort of an arrangement that was not to their advantage financially, maybe a high interest loan or some sort of scam even. But you will find that folks do also possess some very strong knowledge in certain areas of their finances, especially when it comes to being able to access community resources and knowing what other types of help exist within our community. Some folks might come in and might be very savvy in certain ways as far as saving money or finding the most cost-effective option, and maybe just need to have a better understanding of how to develop some savviness in other aspects of their finances. So very important to understand that most folks do have some pocket of very solid, strong financial knowledge, and they really just need to understand how to transition that same capability to gaining understanding in other areas that are going to be important for their future finances, such as their credit, improving their debt to income, etc. A lot of folks might have resources that they draw upon regularly that could be helpful and also detrimental. There might be different individuals in their lives that they're trying to, manage a relationship that might not be totally advantageous financially. And they're trying to get their head around how do they go about that? How do they budget? How do they, understand the disbursement of different resources along the way? They might have to improve their resources and take a look at ways to improve their income. And while we're not, a job placement program, we can certainly get folks connected to places like Rochester Works and other organizations that are fantastic here in our community that can help them. Once again, most of our folks, I should say all of our folks, have some sort of income to work with. That's one of the qualifications of being in the program, is you have resources that need to be managed and you want to learn how to manage those better. So a lot of what our partners are dealing with is moving from survival mode into planning mode. And this is something that we've learned from a program called Bridges Out of Poverty, which is a fantastic resource that you can search out on the internet. Again, it's called Bridges Out of Poverty. And I think it's a great way to understand, what the work is that we are undertaking for many folks who are moving forward economically and with their self-sufficiency. They might be in that survival mode and have been in survival mode through need. And that looks like what we have up here on the screen. We're searching for resources. We're trying to find that fulfillment of our day-to-day needs. That means going to a lot of different appointments and engaging with many different agencies, 7 agencies on average for the person who is progressing out of poverty and trying to find resources that will move them out of poverty. And at the same time trying to figure out how to pay the next bill, how to keep on track, and how to, rob Peter to pay Paul maybe, how to juggle to keep things going, which means you're going to have a lot of different anxieties that are going to come along with that. It could even be worrying about how to have stabilized housing, how to keep, a roof over our heads. So there's a lot of pressure that will be there when someone's in that survival mode. At the same time, they might be searching for jobs, searching for better income opportunities, and helping others who are in that same boat. There's certainly a network that folks connect to and that they can draw from and be a resource to as they are working through this progression from survival mode to planning mode. So how do we get them there? How do we take the right approach to get folks to planning mode? And what that means is we're thinking about not only what's happening right now because we have to, but we're also thinking about what is it that makes the most sense to get me to the next step that's going to be truly beneficial to progressing out of this survival mode. Well, let's talk a little bit about that approach next. So as far as the best approach is concerned, it's going to vary quite a bit, but there's some things that we've found that have been very helpful to think about and consider and keep in your mind along the way. We mentioned before, recognize the savviness and resources that folks possess that can be drawn upon, and help people recognize that and understand how they can transition that same ability, that same capability into that planning mode. How can they take that same will and desire to search out resources and find the best places to go to access a food bank, etc., to do research regarding strategies for improving their credit score and credit building products at financial institutions. So helping people to, understand that they have that ability and they have that savviness that will really be a position of working off of what we would call a strengths-based approach. Okay. Secondly, acknowledge, celebrate those skills and abilities. So when you see that, when you see someone is doing something good with their budgeting, even though there's many other steps they could be taking right now, start by acknowledging what they're doing well. So maybe someone's budget, is really upside down. They're over budget by $300 a month. They got more expenses than income coming in, but they're a couponer. They use coupons. Acknowledge that, celebrate that, talk about how that is so beneficial and how they might have been able to develop that skill and the effort that they put into doing that and how they can transition that going forward. Make sure you understand your partner's experiences. It's very beneficial to solicit that from your partner. You don't have to obviously delve into grave detail, but just in general, sometimes you might want to say, well, talk to me about what you've experienced with blank. And that could be, talk to me about what you've experienced when it comes to getting loans or pursuing credit, looking at your credit report, managing your budget. That's a great lead in to a discussion where someone can open up and really share some helpful tips with you, some helpful information with you. Number 4, don't look at your partner as being broken. Sometimes when you take the approach if somebody needs to be fixed, that can create a pretty inequitable relationship. And we don't see our folks as being broken. We just see them as having to understand how to take those abilities and those understandings, capabilities that they have right now, and apply them in a different manner. If you can see it that way, you can understand how to lead someone in that direction, you'll see incredible results. So create a relationship that is an equal give and take. It's important to have that transparency that we just mentioned. If you've gone through similar challenges, I would encourage you to express that you've gone through similar challenges and talk about how you felt. Rather than saying, hey, yeah, I went through that, so it's not so bad. Talk about how you felt during that time, and that will really help someone to understand, that sympathy and empathy that you are taking in their situation. We talked about centering the relationships on their goals and, of course, helping folks to shift that mentality from survival mode to planning mode, thinking ahead, asking those leading questions that are helping people to understand that they need to look at what's coming down the road and how they can consider those things that are coming down the road. That's really what will help our partners to make those transitions and to be successful not only during the coach program, but going into the future as well. So here's an example of a very typical scenario that we might run into often with our partners in the Cash Coach program. We might be working with them for a little while, and we don't really feel as though our partner is comfortable enough yet to give us the full story. So maybe after a couple months, we review income and expenses, and it seems as though there's a positive balance at the end of our partner's monthly budget. They should have some extra money. But our partner has expressed to us several times that they never have any extra money. They feel like they're always falling behind. So it's clear that there's something that's missing. Something's not being accounted for, something they're not comfortable yet sharing with us, or maybe they just don't see clearly. So the question comes up quite often, how do we get someone to feel comfortable enough to share everything that's going on? So let's go over a few things that will be very helpful in a situation like this, which is very common. So number one, what you want to do to help your partners get over that anxiety and fear and sharing information about their personal finances is to create and communicate that you are both equally operating in a judgment-free zone. What usually holds us back from talking about these types of financial issues openly with anyone is that we feel like we're going to be judged, or someone is going to somehow think that we are not doing what we should be doing with our finances. And that's probably why finance is the least talked about topic in our culture overall. So communicate the fact that you're there for their support. You are not there to judge them. I think it's very helpful if you just outright make a promise to your partner that you're never going to be shocked or disappointed by anything that they share with you regarding their finances, that you're just going to continue to help them best understand how they can move forward, become clear on the steps they need to take, become clear on their financial picture, and how to get to their goals. Again, it can be important or helpful to share something about your own experiences and challenges, things that have frustrated you in the past. That's a very valuable tool as well. We also encourage coaches to be patient. Rome wasn't built in a day. Folks didn't get in the situation that they're in a day. It's going to take some time. And historically, most people have made the most progress through the coach program during the last third of their coaching experience. So over the 9-month period, during the last 3 months is when most folks will make the most headway traditionally. And continue to verbalize those good things that you see and learn to ask the right questions. So that's what we're going to get into next. And I think this will be very helpful in understanding how to foster a good discussion and how to maintain that very productive judgment-free zone. So first, when we talk about fostering a good productive discussion and asking questions of our partner to solicit feedback and information, we want to understand there are closed questions and open questions. So neither of these are the wrong type of question to ask. It just helps to understand which type of question is going to be beneficial at the right time. At the beginning of our coaching experience, having more open-ended questions is by far more beneficial than starting with closed questions. So closed questions, obviously, again, as you can see, are the things that will only elicit a yes or no response. And it's very easy to formulate questions that way. We often do instinctively. They'll start with do you, have you, and so on. And so a response could be yes or no, and you don't get a whole lot more information than that. A more effective approach often is one with an open end. So as you can see here, how do you organize your bills? Or tell me how, talk to me about X, Y, or Z. I usually like to start with, hey, just talk to me about how you manage your finances. You'll get tons of information from folks. Once in a while you'll hear somebody say, well, I don't do anything to manage my finances, and it kind of ends there. And you just got to think of some other angles then to take. So they might say, do anything to manage my finances. Okay, well, talk to me about what you do when you get your bills, right? Someone might say, well, once I get my bills, I stack them up in a corner on a desk, and every time that I get paid, I go through that stack and I see which one I need to pay next. Okay, great. Well, you got a place where you're organizing your bills. You've got a place where you can locate them easily. You have a way to prioritize. Let's talk about how we can build on that if that's been working for you, right? So that's a great way to think about structuring your questions in the order of how you're going to manage those discussions by starting with those questions that are a little bit more open-ended. So next we just have a really helpful list of good starting questions. I won't go over this whole entire list because you can read them there and you can access this at any other point within the program. But things like tell me how you plan to organize, right? So that's a great way to approach things so we can understand, what is someone's approach towards organizing and the way that they think, because it's a little bit different for everyone. Some people like to write things down. Some people, might need more visual cues. Some people might need a voice reminder. That's a great way to start so that you can direct your efforts in the right manner. Asking people what steps they think that they should take, and then fostering your discussion off that. Lots of great starters from this list here. Okay, so we have our open-ended and our closed-ended questions. We understand how to use those. What are some other conversation strategies? One that's kind of interesting that I think we don't always consider is pausing. And what we mean by that is there could be times where we're asking a question that someone has not considered before. That's probably why they're in the coach program. So we might ask them about an area of their finances where they're not going to have an answer right off the top of their head. They're going to need to formulate their thoughts for a little while. So just important to give people some time to process and to respond, because often when we're in a new relationship, we don't know somebody very well and we ask them a question and they don't respond immediately, our instinct is to reform the question or to move the discussion in a different direction, and then we kind of lose out on that opportunity. So I'd encourage you to, pause, give someone time to think about it, and then move on. Next term there, systematic inquiry. It's just a fancy way to say we want to make sure that we are following a process for gathering information from someone. Most people have a hard time presenting information to us or sharing a thought with us if we are not going in a logical order. So in other words, don't just kind of jump around from talking about your budget to your retirement to your debts to your credit score to your banking. Stay on one topic, have an order for how you're going to discuss that, maybe even have an outline that you could share with people, and that will be a much better approach to take. So a couple other great strategies for managing conversations and making sure things are moving in the right direction is using clarifying statements and doing that in a restatement format. And that way we're never just assuming that we think we know what someone is trying to express to us, and we're also communicating to our partner that we're really doing our best to be clear on what they're communicating to us, what they're trying to share with us, and we are taking a vested interest in what they are expressing to us. So for example, someone might, say something to us and we clarify by saying, so what I hear you telling me is, and it could be something like, you're feeling very stressed out because the holidays are coming up, but you have some bills that have fallen behind and you're not sure how you're going to take care of those things and still cover for the holiday expenses. Is that correct? And you can kind of get that feedback from them. At the same time, it's also helpful maybe to summarize and take some bullet point notes as somebody's talking to you if they're sharing more of an extended story or account of something that they're dealing with. So summarizing all of that will not only help you to be more clear and to be able to pull it all together, but maybe also help the partner become more clear on what it is that is important, what are the main issues that need to be addressed, and how to move forward successfully. So your cash coach experience with your partner starts once a match has been made for you. You'll receive an email with your partner's contact information. At the same time, we will send an email to your assigned partner with your contact information, explaining to them that you've been assigned as their coach. It all begins with a phone call. Once you've received that match information, we ask that you contact your partner about 1 week prior to your first group meeting. Your first group meeting will be the next date that is on the current schedule. So let's say you're starting at the end of September, then your next meeting will be mid-October, second Wednesday of October. That's when you'll have your first group meeting and do your orientation with your assigned partner. On this phone call, what you'll want to do is introduce yourself, break the ice, and show some genuine concern for their situation and explain maybe why you decided to get involved with the coach program, why you volunteered. So the purpose of this call is really just to have a soft introduction so folks hear your voice over the phone and you're not having just a cold introduction face to face the first time at that meeting. It's also great to, talk about ways to identify each other, etc. when you come to that first group meeting. So on that phone call, obviously you're going to want to introduce yourself, let your partner know that your goal is to offer support, direction, and encouragement, maybe answer any questions they might have about your coaching role, your experience, your background. That's typically very helpful just to help establish some trust with folks. And as I mentioned before, tell your partner how they might be able to identify you at the first group meeting, whether it's, certain color shirt you might wear or something like that. Things that, from experience we feel are very important to avoid in that initial conversation is, of course, anything that could be construed or interpreted as a judgment on that person's financial situation. We've had coaches who've gotten a little too far into business from the start, and we really encourage you to avoid that and remember that this is an introductory conversation, so it's not about fixing anybody's problems at that particular time. So you've had a quick phone call with your partner, maybe an email exchange here or there, and you're ready to meet at your first group meeting. So what we're going to do next is talk about the whole process that you'll follow at that first group meeting for your partner and yourself. So as we explained before, each group meeting will follow a specific outline that we have prescribed. So first part of the meeting will be a topic, second part of the meeting will be a breakout session, third part of the meeting will be our one-on-one time that we have with partners and coaches. And we're going to give you just a little hint of what you'll experience during each of those parts, and then we're going to talk about what the orientation process will look like for you at that very first meeting. Number one, we'll go over what we call our money mentality mantra. This is something that we developed that again gets down to that focus and mindset when it comes to finances. So these are a few of the sayings that we go over at each of those meetings. We'll dig in deeper as to what they mean. You might be thinking, what the heck does one of these mean? We talk about each one. We use them as discussion points. It can become a very valuable time to help folks just see things a little bit more clearly and to stay focused on the right things. So the first 30 minutes will typically be our workshop topic for that month that follow a rotating schedule over the 9-month period like we talked about before. And those are the topics that you see up on the screen right now, from budgeting and couponing all the way down through home buyer programs. And over the years, we found that these are the topics that a lot of our partners really desire and are very helpful to them in the experience that they are working on. The next part of our meeting is typically our breakout time. And for your first meeting, that's when we'll have you do your orientation. So you'll be invited to another room that we have for anybody who is attending for the first time that evening. And we'll have a facilitator in that room who will walk you through the orientation process. And what that consists of is completing the intake paperwork that needs to be completed for the coach program. Since this is a grant-funded program, we of course have to track outcomes and different elements of the program to show the impact that we are making. So the first part is filling out an agreement. And the coach partner agreement will be in your handouts as well as your partner's handouts. So this is in the materials that you received so far. This just helps to establish the foundation of the relationship, set the expectations of what everyone is agreeing to, and you and your partner will both sign this, and we will take a copy of that. Next will be contact information. Now, of course, we gather your contact information as well as your partner's contact information when you give us an application and do your interview, but that can change. And we would encourage you to get as much contact information from your partner as possible. So you'll have this worksheet to do that. Our contact information is on there as well, as you can see, so you always have that available to you. But we've had instances where this came in very handy. We had an instance one time where we had a participant who was participating for a few months, missed a meeting, their coach couldn't get a hold of them, and we thought, oh, they just kind of, dropped out of the program. A couple months later, they got back in touch with us, apologizing profusely because they had been in a car accident, and all of their materials, which weren't electronic at the time, were in their car, and their car got, taken away to, repair mechanic, and they didn't get the car back for a while and get the materials back. So make sure you get as many forms of contact as possible. Next is our financial goals worksheet. This is where we really start to lay the foundation for the direction of the coaching experience. This can be done one of two ways. It can be done either through the paper form that you see here, or we also have this electronically. And again, this can be facilitated as you participate at the meeting, whichever form works better for you and your partner. We prefer the electronic form, of course, because that data will come right to us. But this form, we are asking folks to establish their financial goals, and we allow them to establish up to 3 financial goals. Very important here to make sure that you are helping your partner to come up with a goal that is measurable and that is also focused on the next 9 months. Now, we realize a lot of folks are going to have goals that are beyond the 9 months, and we're going to help them to break that down to what they want to accomplish within the 9 months of the program. We also ask them to identify if the goal is a savings goal, a debt goal, or a credit score goal. Pretty much all the goals within the context of the program revolve around that in some form or fashion. So we're going to take a look at an example next. So here are the steps that are prescribed or very helpful in discussing goals with your partner. So we're going to discuss the goals. We're going to have some conversation about what's meaningful to our partner. Might be something like, hey, talk to me about what you really want to accomplish. What is it that you really are going for that would be helpful for you to move forward with your finances? Then determine if it's a savings, debt, repayment, or a credit score goal, and talk about what the partner would feel is appropriate for them to try to work on or tackle during the length of the program. Here's a scenario that is probably very common, where we have a partner who has about $5,000 in different collection accounts, and they're working to also pay down some student loan debt. Altogether, those loans are about $20,000, and their main goal is to buy a home, but their credit score is only 550, and they'd like to be able to buy this home within the next year. All right, so we've got a lot of things coming at us, a lot of things that need to be figured out. Often folks are like, well, I don't know if that's realistic for this partner. I would really encourage you to avoid any language like that. The goal isn't really to define what's realistic for someone. Our job is to help folks to define what steps make the most sense for them right now. If you get into the realistic, unrealistic conversation, the challenge is, and the risk is, that someone can feel that you are discrediting their goal, or you are somehow taking away from the value of their goal. So really do what you can to make sure you're helping someone to define that goal in a way that's meaningful to them. So let's take a look at how a coach might have done that in this particular situation. So here we are with that scenario that we were talking about a moment ago, and how this individual might have put those three goals into different segments of debt repayment, credit score improvement, and savings, where they can consider how they're going to chip away at each of those components during the length of the coach program. So some tips here. Again, the goals have to be quantifiable. That means we have to have something that we can measure. So you're going to see numbers and amounts for each of these planned goals, what the planned amount is. Planned amount means during the program. So during the 9 months of the program, what's the amount that we're planning to tackle? And then, as I said before, don't get too hung up on realistic. Be hung up on what's meaningful and motivational for your partner. Because for us, if someone sets a goal of paying down $100,000 in 9 months and they pay $4,000, they still move the needle. Versus me saying, well, 100,000 is not realistic for you, you shouldn't consider that, blah, blah, blah. Someone gets discouraged and decides to quit the program. Now they haven't moved the needle at all. So let's take a look at how this played out for our scenario. Their first goal was to pay off all their delinquent collection debt. Well, that was about $5,000. But for this partner, they said, you know what? If I could get $1,000 of that paid in the next 9 months, I would be very happy. Okay, let's put that down for the goal. We have that measurable amount of $1,000. All right, overall, their goal is to improve their credit score to a point where they can qualify for a mortgage, which would be 620 or higher. So they are, about 100 points, well, 70 points off from that right now, but they feel that if they could increase by 50 points over the next 9 months, that would be tremendous. And then lastly, they're going to have to accumulate some savings for the down payment and closing costs for that home, maybe about $5,000. But if they can get $1,000 of that saved up during the program, they would feel like that's a real accomplishment. So that's a number of different examples of how we can help someone to distill those goals into workable steps during the program. Let's take a look now at our savings to debt comparison. That would be the next outcome tracking component that we will complete during the orientation process. So some tips on completing this particular worksheet is to list any savings that the partner has right now in possession. We have some examples in that top portion of that worksheet just to help people to think about what we might be referring to or different forms of savings they want to consider going forward. And then secondly, we're going to list any debts. And we're talking about long-term debts that are owed, not monthly amounts. We're not talking about how much I pay to RG&E every month, not talking about how much my monthly expenses total every single month. We're talking about any debts that we owe, student loan debt, medical debt, car loan balances, credit cards, and the other examples that you can see there. To help you with this, we're going to provide you with a debt sheet that's created from your partner's credit report. We will pull your partner's credit report when they come in for their interview for the coach program. And for their orientation, we will print that off and that will be accessible. So that will be very easy to read and understand and pull the information from. You don't have to do any addition or subtraction here. You can if you'd like to. We're going to check your math anyway, and we'll do a comparison not only during, or I should say after that orientation, but we will also have partners complete this after their 9-month program participation, and we will compare the improvement that folks make with their savings to debt. Historically with the program, folks make about a $4,000 improvement to their savings to debt. So just a tremendous result that we've been able to see people experience over the years, and one that we're very proud of. Here's an example of someone's situation when it comes to their savings and their debts. So let's ask the question, which items do we think would be listed first as savings on that worksheet that we were just viewing? We've got a checking account balance or savings account, 401k, RG&E, monthly RG&E, and RG&E back balance. That means, we've fallen behind by a certain amount to RG&E and now it's a debt. Our car loan, student loan, medical debts, tax lien, the total of our monthly expenses. Well, in this we're going to look at two main pieces in this case as savings. First would be that savings account balance. Secondly would be the 401k. Checking account we do not consider. We're going to talk about why that is in a moment here, but it would just be those two items. So next, let's take a look at debts that we would list. So the debts that we would list on the income and expense worksheet are highlighted in red there, obviously. So what we're excluding would be the monthly RG&E expense as well as our total monthly expenses. We're also going to exclude the value of that vehicle. Why? Well, let's talk about that next. So the reason why we exclude some of these items is really just because we're using this as an outcome measurement tool. And we had to look at what are the things that are the biggest influence, the things that we are influencing the biggest through the work that's being done with Cash Coach. We can influence folks to take the right action in paying down debts. We can influence folks to take the right actions in savings towards their goals. A checking account balance is cash flow. It's not indicative of impact on their savings or paying down debts, right? That's going to be communicated through the bottom line of their savings account balance going up and their debts going down. Same thing with the monthly RG&E expense. That's a monthly expense. It's incorporated with their overall expenses, not their savings and debt. We don't include mortgages or the value of a vehicle because the value of a home or a vehicle can go up or down. Well, usually down for a vehicle, depending upon depreciation. Whether or not something depreciates isn't necessarily an indicator of the influence that the Cash Coach program has had on an individual's behavior with their finances. That's why we don't include them. We're not trying to do a full-on net worth calculation here. So that's why we do it that way, and it's worked very well for us. Let's take a look now at how this would come together on that worksheet that we went over previously. So here's the worksheet that we looked at before. And as you can see, we've listed the two savings items that we identified, the emergency savings and the retirement. That's a total of $6,750 compared to the different debts that we identified, including the car loan, student loans, tax lien, medical debt, and the RG&E back balance. So at that point, that's considered a debt. So our difference in this case is a negative $22,775. So you might be thinking, is that typical? Yes, that could be very typical. We still might see some atypical situations where someone has actually considerably high positive difference at the end there, or maybe a much higher negative difference at the end. Again, our goal is just to move the needle in the right direction. So our concern isn't so much whether or not we get that to zero or positive, but whether or not we help that person to move in the right direction. Again, our tips are use our printout that we're going to give you. That will be very helpful. All you're doing then at that point is identifying the lists, the debts that are listed on that sheet and transferring them over. Again, don't include any mortgage information or any monthly expenses or income. Good news with all of this, if you're feeling overwhelmed at all, it'll be facilitated. Someone will be there walking you through this, or you'll be doing it online. So it's just a series of questions that you and your partner are going through together, and it's very self-explanatory. Let's talk about the final piece of our orientation process. So here's the final item to complete for the orientation process. Again, this is online along with the others as we mentioned. This is what we call our financial management scale. There's actually 15 questions. You just have an example of the first 9. And these are to evaluate different financial behaviors that someone might or might not be participating in. And they will rank or rate how often they participate in these behaviors, with 7 indicating always, down to 1 indicating never. So the most important thing that we always try to communicate with partners as they're completing this is they want to complete those answers and respond according to what they are actually doing right now, not to what they feel is the best or what they hope to be doing, because if that were the case, it would be kind of a meaningless measurement. So we want to see, what they're doing right now, and then we're going to do that again 9 months down the road after they complete the program and see what kind of changes have been made. In this section here, we're going to talk about how to conduct your first one-on-one meeting. What we mean by that is the meeting that you'll have with your partner where you won't have the orientation and you're going to have to start digging into the actual work at hand with your partner's goals. So let's get started talking about how to create the right atmosphere and how to get going in the right direction once you are continuing that progress with your partner. Something that'll be very important in working with your partner in conducting one-on-one meetings and having that time together, which again is the most important part of the Cash Coach program, is to cultivate the right environment. And that just means making your partner feel comfortable and giving them the opportunity to be fully engaged. As we mentioned before, a lot of that comes down to creating a judgment-free zone, making sure that your partner understands that you're not going to raise an eyebrow at anything that they share about their finances, and that you're really interested in helping them to think things through clearly towards their goals and the things that they are trying to accomplish. So some quick tips, as you can see there on the screen, take some time to discuss what's been going on in your partner's life. Not that you're going to, delve into deep personal issues, and you shouldn't do that, of course. But, day-to-day things, how are things going? Are you has your day been going well, etc. And be positive. Make sure that things are very positive overall. Some things to do in that first one-on-one meeting that you might have with your partner to get things moving in the right direction is to start with a review of your partner's goals and talk about next steps. So again, at the orientation meeting, you'll have time where you discuss and establish goals together, and those will be the things that you want to have every one-on-one meeting revolve around. The whole focus of the program is about the partner's financial goals and what they need to do to reach those goals. So you'll want to review those and talk about next steps, and then begin to complete the income and expense worksheet, or the partner's budget worksheet. We're going to talk about some very important points when it comes to expenses and income and budgets in just a moment here. But again, that's a very important starting point. And then third thing you'll need to do is record session notes. And we're going to review that process, which is not very daunting and doesn't have to take up a whole lot of your time. So when we talk about reviewing goals and discussing next steps, there's a few things that we might want to key in on. Number one, we're going to want to help our partner prioritize which goals they might want to focus in on the most first. Sometimes they might have to focus on all of the goals at the same time, and then the discussion might be more based on, what actions are going to be most effective for all of those goals, or what items might need a little bit more attention than others right now. So once we do that, we can start to discuss what would those next steps be. So for example, if figuring out income and expenses is going to affect whether or not we can save, or how much we can figure out to save, and how much we can figure out to pay towards our debt, which will then improve our credit score, well, it might make a lot of sense that we would start talking about that right now. So having that discussion about things that will affect those goals and things that will produce the greatest level of impact towards those goals is a great approach to take for that review. And you see some examples here of some of the next steps that might be considered in this particular situation. So number one might be figure out our affordability. for our debt repayment to pay down that $1,000, and also the savings to contribute that extra $1,000 towards this partner's savings. Second would be maybe there's creditors that need to be contacted, and we discuss one in particular. That would be the priority contact to start with in that process. And then lastly, maybe this partner reveals that they don't have a savings account set up yet, so they need to do some research to get that account set up and figure out which option is the best one for them. So as we mentioned a moment ago, reviewing income and expenses will be a huge portion of the Cash Coach program, as well as the work that needs to be done for any partner to progress in any of their financial goals. So a few things that are very important to understand about this is, number one, it's going to take some time to get this in place. It won't be built out in that first meeting, so you can get that right out of your head right now. It's going to take several meetings to work together to have this built in a meaningful way. So take it one step at a time. A good strategy could be to have your partner maybe gather some information about one of these particular areas where they need to get a better understanding as to how much that expense truly is. Maybe their gas and electric varies quite a bit from month to month, and they need to go back and take a look at some records or call the energy company and see what their average monthly bill has been. And maybe each month there's a few things like that you discuss together and you continue to build into this income and expense worksheet. It's also important to come up with some good monthly averages for those variable expenses like we mentioned are Genie. Others would be groceries or gas. A great way to do that might be to have your partner keep receipts for a month or so to see how much those expenses total to. What are the amounts that they total to for 1 month? Also to consider the periodic expenses such as holidays or school clothes, and to maybe consider those as a monthly expense. So for example, just to give you simple math, if someone figures that they spend about $1,200 a year on holidays, well then we build it into their expenses as a $100 a month expense. And by the way, we would look at this expense and income worksheet for 1 month, as you can kind of determine from the example numbers that are on the screen there. So we're comparing take-home pay over here on the left where it says my income to expenses for the month. So the things that we're going to take care of between fixed expenses, which would be the things that generally stay the same, as well as flexible expenses, which would be the things that we need to figure out the average amounts for, because these are going to change quite a bit. So those are the items that we would help our partner to continue to build into this budget to make it into something meaningful that's going to help us to evaluate what's going on. So those expense tracking assignments will be very helpful in getting to this end goal. So our last question here is, what would we do in a situation like this where we've got a partner who is overspending by $100 a month? Do we say shame on you for overspending $100 a month? Or do we develop a conversation that's going to be productive and help them to get to solutions that make sense? That's what we're going to head into in just a moment here. We talk about some strategies, but right off the bat, I would say best thing to do is ask your partner what they think they would want to focus on to start making improvements here so that we can start reaching the goals at hand. So after you do work such as working on the income and expense worksheet that we just discussed, or any type of interaction that you might have with your partner at a one-on-one meeting, the last piece of business to make sure you cover is to develop session notes. This is probably even more information in this example than we're really looking for, but it shows you the types of things that a coach might write down once they complete their session. Or actually, I would encourage you to actually take these notes as you are working together with your partner during your meeting, and let your partner see what you're writing down as well. It doesn't necessarily have to be a secret. But the two main things that we're trying to capture here are the bullet points of what was discussed. So you see recently took on a new position at work earning $2 more per hour. And then what the action items were that were discussed from the things that were brought up in the conversation. So our partner is going to contact the collection agency and provide updated insurance information. So maybe they had a collection account that needed to be paid for by insurance. So they're going to take that step before the next month. Now, with the action items in particular, I would really encourage you to do fewer than you see on the screen here. I would really stick to 1 or 2 action items each month, unless your partner is really adamant that they feel that they could do more, they want to tackle some more things. And that will help your partner to really stay focused and to not feel overwhelmed. Very important that we set our partners up for success. And to do that, we make sure that they're not going to be in a situation where they feel overwhelmed by the work at hand, but they feel that they have the ability, the empowerment, and the confidence to take care of those items coming up. So this is again used so that we know what's going on. You only need bullet points of the highlights of what's discussed. We do not want a tome or a book on this. These worksheets will be in your workbook, and we'll have extra copies at each session as well that we can give you. At the end of each session, what we would do is we'll just take that and scan it. We have scanners here at the office or on site wherever we might be meeting, and we can just give you your copy back and we'll have ours for our own records. If you ever end up meeting outside of a regular monthly meeting, because maybe you and your partner just weren't able to make that monthly meeting and you made arrangements to have your one-on-one time held off-site, then you would just simply email us your notes after that meeting. Now we're going to talk about some different situations that might arise that would be outside of the regular structure of the Cash Coach program and what we have put in place as the procedure for some of those differences that might arise. So the first kind of special thing that comes up quite often is, can we have additional meetings or contact with our participant? If you and your partner both agree and feel that it's valuable to have an additional meeting or phone call or email communication, that is totally within your jurisdiction to go ahead and establish that. Again, it's something that has to be convenient for both of you and agreed upon by both you and your partner. You can't obviously force your partner to have extra meetings with you, but if they feel that that's valuable and you do and you can both do it, by all means. We do expect that you communicate that with us, as well as provide session notes for each of those meetings. For those meetings that are considered what we'd call off-site or off-schedule from our regular group meetings, you would also have to conduct those at a public location. That would mean a library, restaurant, community center, etc. Obviously, no one's homes or anything of that nature. If a partner misses a meeting, what we ask you to do is to make at least 2 attempts within a week at each contact information that they give to follow up with them to see if there was some mitigating circumstance for why they had missed. If they don't respond within, if this says a week, but even a few days, you could notify us and we will follow up with your partner. If there are any issues, etc., then we'll do our best to intervene and find ways to get things back on track. We've dealt with different situations before where folks just maybe, lost contact information, or maybe a circumstance came up and they were feeling a little bit guilty, etc., and we're able to redirect and get them back on track. Some partnerships use different strategies to help with this as well, where maybe they text each other to confirm that they will both be at the monthly meeting a day or 2 ahead of time. We always send out reminder emails of the upcoming meetings. We have a Facebook page as well, which you can find by going to Facebook and searching Cash Coach Program, and that will give reminders of the upcoming meetings. So some of those strategies will help. Every once in a while, though, it does happen where, hey, partner didn't show up and you thought that they were going to be there and they confirmed. And again, we just ask that you follow up with them to see what the circumstances were. If you don't get a satisfactory response after that time, then you let us know. Again, our contact information is in your materials, in your workbook, and then we'll follow up and work on rectifying the situation. So final few wrap-up thoughts for the Cash Coach training. We want to remind you again that the Cash Coach program is all about offering encouragement, being empathetic to your partner's situation and circumstances, and the goals that they have. Your job is to offer support and accountability. That means doing the job to ask the right thoughtful questions so that our partners are looking at things the way that they need to be and that they're getting to the conclusions that make the most sense for them. Always offer options for various situations. We want to avoid only steering someone in one direction or not discussing the full breadth of all of the opportunities that are available with any type of discussion that we're having. It can be helpful to role play situations, maybe if somebody needs to make a phone call, and that really helps people to become more confident and to be empowered to take action. Continue to use the process we talked about to build comfort, build that judgment-free zone, and be flexible and be patient. Historically, with the Cash Coach program, most folks make the biggest portion of their progress in the last third of the program. So over the 9 months where we meet one-on-one, those last 3 months are usually where folks make the biggest headway. So even if you don't see the progress that you were hoping to see, be patient and understand that your partner is still having great value added to their situation from the discussions that you have, and in time it will make a big change. Stay focused, stay on task with your partner's goals and the coaching experience, and make sure that you validate their feelings along the way, because that will help them to understand that you also understand where they're coming from. And finally, some of the things to be reminded that we want to try to steer clear of is, number one, don't do the work for your partner. What that means is if our partner needs to make a phone call, by all means you could be on the call, but don't make the call for them. Don't lead the conversation. Be there for support. If your partner needs to write a letter, etc., that's work that they need to do. You're there to empower them to be able to learn how to do those things so they can carry those skills throughout the rest of their life. Obviously, don't judge. As we said before, don't keep any of your partner's sensitive, personally identifiable information, as we want to make sure we protect their privacy. Keep your partner's information private as far as their situation. Only share those important pieces of what they're working on with program administrators. Please don't get discouraged, and remember that if you ever have a question, you need to get some clarification on something that you might be working on or a discussion that you have with your partner, you can reach out to us at any time and we will be your support system. Don't expect your partner to meet your expectations for their progress. People make progress at different intervals and in different ways. We have means for measuring that progress. And I'll tell you, each time we have a graduation ceremony, which we're looking forward to having you at, inevitably one coach will say, I don't feel like I did anything for my partner. And at the graduation ceremony, that coach's partner will stand up and say, I couldn't have done it without my coach. They were the best coach I could have ever had. So please hang in there and realize that it doesn't always look the way that we would expect it to look when somebody is progressing, but they are progressing. And don't provide transportation for your partner. That can come up once in a while where somebody needs a ride, etc. For your own liability and the program's liability, we have to have a policy where we don't allow you to provide transportation for your partner. Okay, congratulations. You have made it through the new Cash Coach training. We really appreciate you taking the time to go through the training, and we really appreciate your interest in being a coach and are looking forward to getting you connected as soon as possible with your partner and plugging you in with the monthly meetings. The last part of the process to be accepted as a Cash Coach is to follow the link that's on the screen and complete the post-assessment. This is an open book test, so feel free to use this PowerPoint for any of the questions that you find. And if you really run into trouble, you can always reach out to us and call us, and we'd be happy to help you out. Once it's completed, you'll receive an official acceptance notice from us. We will send you an email saying, hey, we've received your completed assessment. You're accepted into the program, and that's when you're actually official. Our contact information is there if you have any additional questions or concerns. Again, feel free to email. For me personally, again, email's the easiest, so you can email criflin@cccsofrochester.org. And if you don't reach me, you can follow up with Dan or Mary. The link, you should be able to click that. If you can't, then you're going to type in, as you see it there on the screen, the last part where it says new coach training. It's actually new_coach_training. I know you can't see that with the link, but if you have to, for some reason, go into your browser and type that in, that's how you need to type that in. So type in the first part, and then the last part, new_coach_training. Thank you again. We're looking forward to being in touch with you very soon and bringing you on board for the fantastic Cash Coach program. Have a great day.